Kia ora.
Kia ora. I'd like to introduce Paul Johnston, who's a delegate of ours at City Care. And he will be doing the speaking part for our submission.
Good afternoon. Thank you for reading our submission. I take it you've all read it as written.
Yep.
Please excuse my nervousness. It's the first time I've sat before this body, and let's face it, you are my bosses.
No, we're not. No, we're not. I promise we're not.
Thank you for that. Our submission is to bring City Care back into the fold under the strategic assets list. I've worked for City Care for 10 years. When I started, Mike Moore was the mayor, then under Bob Parker.
Gary Moore.
Gary Moore, sorry. Like I said, I'm nervous.
It's okay.
Right, and then under Leanne. And City Care was a great company to work with and to work for. We were a family, and we have we have close ties working with the staff within the council buildings, and we still do. During the earthquakes, we put out everything that we had to bring our city back under function. Some of our guys were the first guys out on the road. September, I made sure my children were safe, and then by 6 o'clock in the morning, I was back out on the road. I was in this building fixing leaks. I was at the Durham Street building, seeing with staff from the council, seeing whether we could get that building back up and running. Unfortunately, we couldn't. We were going back and forwards over the country, and we worked hard because we're owned by the city and we care for our city. And then it turned around and the council put us up for sale. And I understand that we had financial reasons for doing that. I understand why you did it. I understand that the city needs the money, but I don't think you could believe the personal impact it had on our staff at City Care. I still have friends and workmates who are worried about their job security because they were up for sale. And at any stage, the council could put us up for sale again. And I don't really understand why, although I understood that you needed the money. I think the returns that you get from us working hard because we care for our city is far more important to this council than what the short-term gains of selling us would ever be. The fact for that reason is during the earthquakes, after February earthquake, I worked with a very tight team working at the art gallery, keeping the art gallery up and running. I was spending 18 hours a day there. One, so it was a safe place and a comfortable place for the civil defence to work out from, to work in our city. And two, to protect the artwork that our city has spent so much money in buying for the public. If we hadn't been there, I don't think you would have had as good a service. I don't think you would have had a private company putting in as many hours as what we did. As you just heard from the last submission, you've got private companies doing the road, they're shutting down at 6 o'clock. They're going home. When I know for a fact that our guys will keep on working because we care for the city and because you're our bosses and we want to do a good work for you. I know you shake your head,
We're not your
but
bosses,
the truth is you own Christchurch City Holdings and Christchurch City Holdings owns us.
It doesn't make us your bosses.
I know,
Yeah.
but really that's what we see it as, because we see ourselves as being a tight family. And we see ourselves as workers who want to do our best for you and for our city. And that's why with the help of our union, we want to see the City Care brought back under the strategic assets list. One, so my fellow workmates can have that job security back, because when they know they've got that job security back, when they know that they are stable in their job, I know they work harder. I know they put in that extra bit, and I'd love to see that happen for them. Thank you.
think so. And of course, the other part of our submissions around the living wage, which we would really like to see some recommendations that we put on there. You would have read the submission, so we've got nothing further to add to it. Rather, we'll wait for questions on that because I'm sure you have some.
Yeah.
But I just wanted to make a special case for our strategic assets for City Care.
Just City Care would have submitted accounts to the city for all of the work it did in the earthquakes. I mean, it got paid for all of the work. The company got paid for the work that you guys did.
I'm sure they did, yes.
And
so did we.
as did Fulton Hogan, as did all of the other contracting companies that worked after the earthquakes, because everyone worked hard after the earthquakes. And I'm not taking anything away from you guys, but everyone worked hard after the earthquakes. But contracting companies all got paid. Jamie?
Yeah, well, Leanne sort of touched on what I wanted to say, and to add to that, thank you for your work that you've done, and also you're actually our boss because we're a council that works for you, so we want to get that round the right way. Anyway, my question is just around the having City Care on the Strategic Asset Register, and I'm just interested to note or to get your perspective on the job security side of things. So do you believe that, say, an employee at Fulton Hogan or Downers or one of the other contractors has less job security than City Care?
I actually believe they have more at the moment because it's less likely that Fulton Hogan's going to go up for sale. If in the next 2 months this council finds that it's suddenly got a large debt, City Care, because it's not on the strategic asset list, can be put out on the market, and suddenly, like we found last time, your credit rating went up, the government gave you an extra bit of money. I know that the sale fell through because it wasn't the actual package that you're looking for, but most of my comrades believe that you actually got what you wanted by having your credit rate go up and the extra money coming in from the government.
I think
that's the perception out there, and the perception is you'll do it again,
Yeah,
and you'll do it
the
again.
misunderstanding. I think what makes City Care workers vulnerable to losing their jobs is if we lose contracts, not if we sell the company. So I think it's losing contracts that's probably the highest risk to any contracting company, because you don't just work for Christchurch City Council. City Care works for Auckland City Council. It works for works in Wellington. I saw a Wellington Loves City Care sign, and when I drove into Wellington one day. So yeah, I think
the point Paul's trying to make though is the vulnerability they're feeling.
Yes,
and
I
so
know.
whether it's the reality of how the system works, it's how the actual
and that's
staff
what
are
I was
feeling.
trying to do, with to offer some reassurance that it's not the sale that would make you vulnerable. It is actually losing contracts that would make you vulnerable. But the work that you're doing, I mean, City Care's just won a huge contract in Auckland, which is obviously quite significant in terms of the. Sorry.
And another couple in Christchurch.
Yes, just recently. Yeah. So I mean, and that will really help the situation. So I had, was it Phil, Glenn?
Thanks for your submission, Karena and Paul. I just want to ask you about the living wage, and that one of these sort of arguments that sometimes we would hear against having a living wage for council, say, is how in fact it may impact on attracting new staff or retention of staff, particularly if those other staff are, say, just on or just above the living wage. I just wonder if you might like to comment on that.
It's the same sort of argument we've been having around the equal pay, where there's that whole issue about the relativity and people saying if we pay the aged carers exorbitant amounts of money, well, then these other people aren't going to go into the work because they're not getting as much. But in fact, our argument's always been, but it's about everyone actually having dignity of living, and everyone having the dignity to actually have an amount of money that they can actually live on and not actually be in poverty wages. And so, yes, there will always be an issue of relativity that needs to be looked at, and professional development and qualifications that will raise the wages of those people. But even the ones that are just below the living wage will come up to the living wage. And I think that the most important thing is saying is that it's about what we're doing and bringing money in, because those people are actually struggling out there. And there's also been arguments, I know, that where they put forward that affects, younger people better and, things like that. But in reality, a lot of those young kids, when we talk about them, are actually taking their money home to their families because their families are struggling. And so that money goes to them as well. And it's about the dignity. And we talk to people, like when the quote I put in there, when we talk to a lot of our delegates at our delegates forums at Etu Holes, and we just had a recent round of delegates forums where we got those comments from. To them, it's about being able to, because it's not just about the money, because sometimes, people think, okay, they're going to get that and they're going to get a 40-hour week, but they don't get a 40-hour week. A lot of these workers don't actually work 40 hours a week, especially the casual workers and all that. So it's about them actually having some security in the amount of money they're going to receive. If they only get 3 or 4 hours in that week, they're still actually giving a reasonable amount of money to subsidise what they're already getting from the other benefits. And it's the idea of being able to actually not have to work 2, 3, 4 jobs to actually get an amount of money that they can actually exist on in their workplace. So, yeah.
Glenn?
Thank you. Karena, just in the debate over city care as a strategic asset, could you give us your view on that?
So the reason why Etu is strongly behind putting it in a strategic asset list is one was the vulnerability we heard from our workers, but also it gives protection to that company. I mean, the fact is that it does bring back returns to the council, and when it's in a strategic list, it means that the people of Christchurch get to have a say, because it's not going to stop. Being on a strategic list doesn't stop it from being sold. It just stops it from being sold without consultation. And what we're saying is that you should always actually enable there to be consultation. And actually, if you're going to move it off again, we can actually have those words.
No, you have to have consultation anyway.
You do, but not to the same level as you do for a strategic asset list. And so once it's in a strategic asset list, it's a much more deeper amount that has to be done to remove it off before it can actually be done. And so, and that's what we're wanting, that added bit of protection. For an asset that we really believe in, because it's an infrastructure for Christchurch. And we really should be supporting our infrastructure in Christchurch. And we should be protecting it, which is why I agree that Enable should have come back in as well, because they are what actually runs Christchurch. It's not just about the people, it's about the infrastructure underneath it. And that's where City Care looks after our pipes, they look after our lands, they look after our parks, they look after our roads. They're all part of what makes Christchurch Christchurch. And yes, we do have other contractors in and we contract out our systems. And I think that's something we need to look at seriously, is why we actually continually contract out when we actually, and look at trying to actually drive I know it's about getting the best deal, but sometimes about local procurement has to be about what's the best social good. And that's not always bringing in places like Delta from Dunedin, who actually are who don't pay their workers as much and don't give them the same respect and the same protection.
Yeah, we've got buy local in our procurement policy. It's
Yeah.
Tim?
Does the City Care upper management give briefings to staff about their vision and what's, because recently they've gone into construction, they're a national company, and you mentioned Delta from Dunedin, but we've just won City Care's just won a contract in Auckland, so things have changed, and you're a national company, you're going into construction. It's not what City Care used to be. No. And it seems to me what you're talking about, and we've all seen it, is and years ago City Care was City Care. It looked after our city, and that's what it did, and it specifically targeted Christchurch. Now it's gone out and it's doing other things, but has that been relayed to you guys and all the staff, and saying, hey, this is our vision, this is where we're going, and this is how it's happening?
Like a lot of big companies, the spread of information downwards takes time. The 2 latest contracts that you've heard about, I suspect we probably won't hear about them until next week.
I actually hadn't heard about them, to be quite honest, but Yeah.
Right. Well, there you go. There is a good flow of information. Some things we hear, Some things we don't. Some things our bosses think are confidential don't get spread to us as the tradies. But once again, City Care, from my perception, has had to go out and get these outside contracts because a lot of Christchurch contracts were subbed out to outside companies for a lower wage, some of which I know that those companies have then had to walk away with because they bartered too low for them and couldn't lift their wages, and City Care have come in and picked them up again. So we are important. I know for myself, I work in the facilities maintenance. We do a lot of the residential flats. There's a lot of companies out there who don't want to do that sort of work. It really is crud work when you have to crawl underneath floors in flats with tenants who really don't look after their flats. But we do it because it's part of what we do for our city. And that's the bottom line.
Can I just focus on the living wage for a minute, because that's just one particular area.
Yeah.
I kind of feel like that there is a solution, but it actually would require the unions to agree not to insist on relativities, i.e. take a flat dollar wage increase instead of a percentage increase, because 10% of a mouse is different from 10% of an elephant. And if we could have flat wage increases, then it wouldn't cost the ratepayers anything. It just would mean that people whose percentage of their salary just goes on and on and on and on, that would then actually pay to lift the bottom. But every time that is proposed, it's the unions that say, sorry, I've got to protect all my members and we want the relativities maintained. Can we have a genuine conversation about relativities?
Yes, we can. And in fact, we've actually been having that conversation within our unions. And I know that in the last round of negotiations, the PSA, though they still went for percentages, they went for a two-tier percentage so that the lower wages got a higher percentage and the higher wages got a lower percentage. So the discussions are occurring, and we are aware that the living wage, we have to try and bring it in as best as possible, and that it is going to require that. So that is occurring. And
so that would not be a cost to the ratepayers of Christchurch.
Yeah, I'm saying we're looking at so that it would bring it in as the best pay possible. That actually, and that's why we, as I said, PSA brought in a 2% increase, one higher and lower, so that, it was similar to a flat rate, but it worked out the same way. So we are having those conversations as part of the Living Wage Steering Group with the unions, and we're having the same conversation with our public service people who are doing it, because and we have the same conversations at the moment in Auckland. They're going ahead as well. They're having an implementation discussions between council staff and the unions. In fact, I think it's happening today.
That's incredibly helpful, because you have to remember that a decision made by the council doesn't automatically flow onto the rest of the city.
Yeah.
So we'll have people paying their rates bill saying, how come I'm paying more for a living wage when I ain't getting a living wage? But if they aren't paying more because we've actually managed to develop it within the fiscal envelope, as it were, then that makes a lot of sense. I think that was your idea about 2 years ago, Raph.
Yeah. and that's part of what we've been working towards when we've been having these meetings, as part of Unions Canterbury, to try and, we've been trying to, chairing that to ensure, and that's what we're working towards, and that's part of why in our request we asked for that information, so we can look at an implementation process that brings up the bottom and still actually keeps the top happy with that and makes it a lesser cost than normal. So
excellent.
That is something the unions are definitely wanting to work with.
Extremely helpful. Thank you very much.
And you're right, it doesn't flow on straight away, but it does help. The living wage for a lot of our members will mean parents not having to work 2 or 3 jobs just to make ends meet and not really getting to see their kids and have a family life, to them be able to let go of one of those jobs because they're getting the wages they need out of the other, and it increases the amount of money that they have, it increases their family life, it increases the amount of money they're able to put back into the local economy.
Yeah, I mean, back in the day, there used to be national awards that actually, enabled unions and employers to sit down and negotiate these things on an industry basis, taking into account the needs of the industry and working through these issues. And actually, this is the result of the Employment Contracts Act. Actually, that we're even having this conversation. But look, thank you both very much. It's been an incredibly enlightening one. I didn't, mean to be sort of reflecting on it, but I just, you know, we are very grateful for all of the work that all of our contractors did. City Care, is one of our companies, but the work that everyone did after the earthquakes, it was just extraordinary. And the decision to go to market with City Care wasn't one that we made very easily, but as you say, the decision was made ultimately not to accept the offer that was made, as it wasn't a compelling one. So thank you very much for taking the time.
Thank you very much.
And could